Hi, honors. First of all, here's what I've done today. I have made a video of all the work for the odds that you did on the Exponent review last night. The first slide, though, is going to be the answers to all the odds. So you just need to go through and check them. Any problems you missed, I want you to fast forward to that place in my video so that you can go over it with me so that you can find your mistakes. Very important that you do this process, okay? Because that's the only way you're going to know what mistakes you're actually making. All right, you are not going to submit any reflection or anything. I'm just going to trust that you're going to do this. Once you have checked your homework, then you're going to find a copy of the same exact worksheet in Canvas, and then tonight you're going to do the evens. You do not have to do the evens on the same page you did the odds. I gave you a brand new worksheet so that you can just use a new one. All right, here we go. Okay, here are all the answers to the odds. So go through and check your answers, and then again, you can fast forward to the ones that you missed and go through them with me so you can figure out what you did wrong. Okay, so I'm going to do a few of these at the same time on the same page, just so save some time here. So if you look at number 1, the way I did number 1 was I take my coefficient, -2, and I square it. -2 squared is 4. Then I'm going to deal with the x squared to the squared, so that's x to the 4th. And then if you look at the y to the 3rd, you get y to the 3rd to the 2nd is the 6th. And that's the answer for number 1. Number 3, I got to do the first power to a power. So 3 cubed is 27. X squared to the 3rd is x to the 6th. There's an imaginary 1 on that y in the first parentheses. So 1 times 3 is y to the 3rd. Okay, I'm going to bring down the rest of the problem. So now I'm going to do my coefficients first. 27 times 4 is x to the 6th to the 2nd, or x to the 6th plus x to the 2nd is x to the 8th. And then y to the 3rd and y to the 5th give you y to the 8th. All right, number 5, I'm going to do the first power to a power. So 3 squared is 9. X to the 2nd is x to the 4th. Y to the 4th to the 2nd is y to the 8th. Okay, now I'm going to do the second power to a power. 5 squared is 25. X to the 2nd is x to the 4th. Y to the 5th to the 2nd is y to the 10th. Okay, now I'm ready to put these together. So 9 times 5 is 825. X to the 4th times x to the 4th is x to the 8th. Y to the 8th times y to the 10th is y to the 18th. All right, now I'm going to do number 7. So number 7, I see I've got a negative exponent on the outside. So there's a 1 on this 6, so I know that's going to be 1 times -5 is 6 to the -5th, and of course I'll deal with that later. All right, x to the 2nd to the -5th is x to the -10th. And y to the -3rd to the -5th is y to the 15th. Now, of course, it's going to have negative exponents in my answer. So I'm going to remember that this is really over 1. So 6 to the -5th goes to the bottom. X to the -10th goes to the bottom. Y to the 15th stays on top. The only other thing I need to do now is make sure that I multiply out 6 to the 5th. And when I take 6 to the 5th and I multiply it out, that's 7,776. So there's your answer to number 7. All right, number 9. So number 9, first thing I notice is I have an x to the 0. Well, x to the 0, anything to the 0 is just 1. So technically this first parentheses is just 50 times 1. Now look at the second parentheses. It's 2 m to the 4th to the 0. So you could do this. So 2 to the 1 times 0 is 2 to the 0. M to the 4th to the 0 is m to the 0. But what's anything to the 0 power? This entire parentheses just equals 1. So what I have is I have 50 times 1 times 1. That's just 50. That's how I got my answer. All right, I'm ready for number 11. So I'm going to zoom in on number 11. So number 11, I have 32 and 16. So I know that 16 goes into 32 twice. All right, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that 2 on top. I could look at the x's. There's no negatives there, so I know the bottom x wins by 3. Now, these y's, I can't do anything with them yet. I got to flip them over because they both have negative exponents, so they're going to flip. But then, of course, I'm going to reduce here. So I get 2 over x cubed, and then y to the 5th over y to the 3rd. The top y wins by 2. Okay, I'm going to go on to 13, number 13. So first of all, I'm going to look at my coefficients. There's a couple ways I can do this problem, so I'm just going to randomly choose a way. So 3 goes into 15 5 times. Now I need to remember there's a negative here. Whoops. Why won't it let me write on it? There we go. So now my coefficients, I have a negative, a 2, and a 5. So that's just negative 2/5. Okay, so if I look at the top, I've got x to the 5th, x to the 10th. So that's x to the 15th. And then I have a y. And then on the bottom, I have x to the 13th, and I have y squared. So I'm ready to play the game. So the top x wins by 2, so that gives me x squared on top. There's an imaginary 1 on this y, so the bottom y wins by 1. So there is my answer to number 13. 15, we skipped. Number 17. All right, so number 17, I can take a 12 out of each of these coefficients. That gives me 3 and 2. All right, but now I got to deal with all these negative exponents. So my x's I'm going to flip over. My y's, the y to the 8th will go to the top, and the y to the 5th will stay on top. And then my z's stay where they're at. Okay, once I get rid of my negative exponents, I am ready to start playing the game. So my coefficients stay the same. My x on top wins by 4. All my y's on top get put together. And my z on top wins by 2. There's number 17. All right, here we go. So now we skipped number 19. I'm going to zoom in on number 21. So on number 21, I'm going to deal with my coefficients first because I don't have any power to powers. So if I take 3 times negative 5 times 6, I know that that is negative 90. And then if I take all my x's and I put them together, x to the 4th and x to the negative 3rd gives me x squared. X squared and negative 8 give me x to the negative 6. But of course I would never leave my answer like that because I have a negative exponent. The negative coefficient is fine. It's going to stay right where it's at. And x to the 6 will go to the bottom. Okay. 23. All right. So let's see here. First of all, that 4, I don't need to do anything to it yet. On the inside, I have 3 to the 3rd. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. X to the 0 to the 3rd. 0 times 3 is 0, so it's x to the 0. So anything to the 0, we don't even need it. So I just have 4 times 27. That is 108 is my answer. Okay, 25. Power to a power. 5 squared is 25. X to the 2nd is x to the 4th. Y to the negative 3rd to the 2nd is y to the negative 6th. Okay, then times negative 3x to the 4th. All right, so if I take 25 times negative 3, that's negative 75. X to the 4th and x to the 4th gives me x to the 8th. And then I have y to the negative 6th. Why can't that be my answer? Because I have a negative exponent. Negative 75 and x to the 8th are going to stay on top. Only thing that's going to go to the bottom is y to the negative 6 goes to the bottom, becomes positive. Remember, negative coefficients don't move. 27. Okay. 27. So I'm going to deal with these coefficients first. So I've got 2, 12, 3, and 5. So I know I can reduce 3 into 12 4 times. So it looks like to me my coefficient is just 2 times 4 on top is 8. 1 times 5 on the bottom is 5. Okay, so if I look at my x's on top, I've got x to the 4th and x to the 3rd. So that's going to give me x to the 7th on top. Y to the 5th. Y to the 8th, that's going to give me y to the 13th on top. On the bottom, I have x to the 5th and I have x to the 6th. That gives me x to the 11th. And then I have y to the 2nd and then y to the 3rd. That gives me y to the 3rd. No, not y to the 3rd. Bad. Not y to the 3rd. How about y to the 5th? Plus, I can't even see it. That yellow is bad. Y to the 5th. Okay, now I'm ready to simplify. So 8 and 5 are going to stay where they're at. And then I have x to the 7th over x to the 11th. That means the bottom x wins by 4. The y's, the top wins by 8. Okay, 29. All right, 29. I seem to be marking on my paper. Okay, 29. Here we go. So let's see. We've got a negative exponent on the outside. So let's see what happens here. So I've got 2, so that's going to be to the negative 3rd. X to the 4th to the negative 3rd is x to the negative 12th. Remember, we don't want to do anything too fast here. Y to the negative 3rd to the negative 3rd is y to the 9th. That negative 3 power on the outside also goes to the bottom 2, so it's 3 to the negative 3rd. 8 to the negative 3rd, or x to the 8th to the negative 3rd is x to the negative 24th. Y to the negative 2nd to the negative 3rd is y to the 6th. All right, so we got all kinds of a mess here. So now let's move our negative exponents. So 2 to the negative 3rd goes to the bottom. 3 to the negative 3rd comes to the top. X to the negative 24th goes to the top. X to the negative 12th goes to the bottom. And then my y's are going to stay right where they're at because they're all positive. Okay, ready to start simplifying. So 3 to the 3rd is 27. 2 to the 3rd is 8. Can't do anything there. X to the 24th and x to the 12th. The top x wins by 12. The y's, the top y wins by 3. All right, 31. Okay, so we've got 7 squared squared. So that's 7 to the 4th. X to the 5th to the 2nd is x to the 10th. Y to the 3rd to the 2nd is y to the 6th. All times this other parentheses. All right, so now we've got a whole bunch of 7s. So 7 to the 4th and 7 to the 5th is 7 to the 9th. And then I have my x's, x to the 10th and x to the 3rd gives me x to the 13th. And then my y's, I just have 1, so y to the 6th. Now that answer is almost okay, except for you have to multiply out the 7 to the 9th. Of course, I would use my calculator. So when I did that, 7 to the 9th was some big number. Got to find my answer key here. It was 403. 53607. So what is that? 40,353,607. X to the 13th, y to the 6th. Okay, moving on to 33. 33. All right. So we have 7 squared. So we're doing power to a power first. 7 squared is 49. X to the negative 2nd to the 2nd is x to the negative 4th. Y to the 5th to the 2nd is y to the 10th. Okay. Now in the second parentheses, we have 3 to the negative 3rd. So I'm not going to deal with that yet. X to the 5th to the negative 3rd is x to the negative 15th. Remember, there's no 1 on that y, so 1 times negative 3 is y to the negative 3rd. All right, so now let's see here. We've got all kinds of stuff. So I have 49. I'm going to put my x to the negative 4th on the bottom and y to the 10th. Over here, I'm going to put my 3 to the negative 3rd on the bottom, becomes 3 to the 3rd. X to the 15th goes to the bottom. Y to the 3rd goes to the bottom. So it looks like this. Okay. All right, so now where are we at here? So let's see. 3 to the 3rd is 27, and we have 49 on top. Nothing I can do to those. I have a y to the 10th on top and a y to the 3rd on the bottom, so the top wins by 7. And on my x's, I have x to the 4th and x to the 5th on the bottom. That just gives me x to the 19th. Okay, so number 35. All right. So we've got a -4 on the outside. So it's everything to the -4th power. So it's going to be 4 to the -4th, x to the -12th, y to the 12th on top. On the bottom, that's a -8 to the -4th. Notice how I put it in parentheses. X to the 16th, y to the 8th. Okay, so now I'm ready to start moving my negative exponents where they should be. So 4 to the -4th goes to the bottom. -8 to the -4th is going to come to the top, but it's still a -8, but the negative exponent goes away. All right, x to the 16th can stay where it's at. X to the 12th can come to the bottom. My y to the 12th can stay where it's at, and my y to the 8th can stay where it's at. Okay, so now I'm going to go over here because I don't need this space over here. When I think about -8 to the 4th and 4 to the 4th, I'm not going to multiply them out. Here's what I'm going to do. 4 to the 4th means this, and -8 to the 4th means this. I see I can cancel. 4 goes into 8 twice, 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 and I have 4 negatives, which make a positive. So all I have left is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16, okay? Otherwise, if you do -8 to the 4th, it's a big number, and 4 to the 4th is a big number, chances are you'll forget to reduce those. Okay, so all the x's on the bottom can be put together, so that's 28. And then the y's, the top y wins by 4. So your answer is 16y to the 4th over x to the 28th. All right, last one, number 37. All right, so first things first, I'm going to look at my coefficients. So I have a 4, an 8, a 16, and a 5. Well, I know 8 goes into 16 twice. So now I've got a 4 times a 2 on the top, and on the bottom I have a 5. So my coefficients are done. All right, so if I look at my x's on top, I've got x to the 3rd and x to the -3rd. Well, that's 0, so those are gone. If I look at my y's on top, y to the -2nd and y to the 8th, -2 plus 8 is 6, so that's y to the 6th. Okay, on the bottom, I'm going to look at x to the 5th and x to the 8th, that's x to the 13th. And then last but not least here, I've got y to the 7th and y to the -5th. That gives me y squared. So I have to simplify. I've got one more thing to simplify. So 8 over 5. My top y wins by 4. And my x to the 13th is on the bottom. Done. Okay, so hopefully you didn't miss very many, but also hopefully you went back through and you looked at your work and my work so that you could find your mistakes and your odds. Don't forget now, you're going to do the evens for homework tonight. Have a good day.